Davos in the Desert. My name is David Wanatik. I'm the CEO of Davos in the Desert. Before we get into our program, which is called Plight of the Uyghurs, let me just make a few comments about our organization, Davos in the Desert. We're primarily an anti-globalist organization. We're concerned about overreach on the part of organizations such as the WHO and the UN. We believe that sovereignty should be preserved and that individual rights and liberties should not be squashed. We do what we can to promote our anti-globalist agenda. We've had a lot of events that deal with the risks of the corrupt UN, the machinations of the WHO. Last week we had a program called Lockdown Nation, and in that program we had a session dealing with the hoax of climate change, corruption at the UN, overreach by the WHO, threats of digital currencies, war against farmers all over the world, and the risk of C4 cities, among other topics. We do what we can to promote legislation that pushes forward our anti-globalist agenda. We support Andy Biggs, our local congressman, in his HR 79 bill, which is called the Withdrawal from the WHO Act, and support Congressman Perry's new proposed legislation dealing with the Defund Davos Act, which is to say the United States won't pay money as a government to the World Economic Forum. We also have a lot of platforms for Republican candidates to introduce themselves and to get their message across. We've had breakfast, lunches, dinners, cocktail hours, rallies, Hanukkah parties, election integrity parties, and we've hosted Republicans running for the U.S. Senate, U.S. Congress, Arizona Governor, Arizona Treasurer, Arizona Secretary of State, Arizona Attorney General, state senators, state legislatures from Arizona. We've had sessions where candidates for mayors of Chandler have spoken, people running for city council, school boards, and others have also spoken at our events. Some of our events focus on oppressed people. In October, we had a gala, and we had a lady from North Korea speak to us about the terror that goes on with the population of North Korea. In December, we had a gentleman from the West Bank talking about how bad Hamas is, how Hamas terrorizes its own people. And tonight, the focus of this program is the plight of the Uyghurs. So this is a very important topic. It's a topic that a lot of people don't know about. When I was promoting this event, I interviewed our speakers, I wrote some articles, and they were published in the Washington Times, Epoch Times, some Arizona newspapers. But when I tell my friends who are very well informed about a lot of current events and what's happening around the world, even many of them simply had no idea what I was saying when I mentioned the word Uyghur. They didn't know what I was talking about. So it's unfortunate that that's the case, but hopefully we can resolve some of that tonight by having this program. So I'll just do very brief introductions of our speakers. Their complete bios are available on our Davos in the Desert website. We have Moiter Illiquid, who is a human rights lawyer, writer, and researcher at the Uyghur Transitional Justice Database, which is based in Norway. The Uyghur Transitional Justice Database is an ongoing project that focuses on the registration of the disappeared and extrajudiciary interned Uyghurs and other Turkic people in China. Her organization was founded by the Norwegian Uyghur Committee in 2018, and Moiter has served as the head of communications for the Norwegian Uyghur community and as a project analyst for the Uyghur Transitional Justice Database since 2020. We also have Abdülhakim İdris, who is the executive director of the Center for Uyghur Studies, a Washington, D.C. based think tank. He is the author of the book Menace, China's Colonization of the Islamic World and Uyghur Genocide, which was published in Arabic, English, Indonesian, and Turkish. Mr. Idris is one of the founding members of the East Turkestan Union in Europe, which was first established in 1991 in Germany as the Uyghur Organization in Europe. Mr. Idris was also co-founder of the World Uyghur Youth Congress in 1996 and the East Turkestan National Congress in 1999. Both of our speakers, Moider and Abdülhakim, have very long and extensive and impressive backgrounds, but for purposes of getting right into the program as quickly as possible, I'll just leave you with the abbreviated backgrounds of these two fine speakers. So we really have leaders of the Uyghur community with us tonight. We're very fortunate. Abdülhakim, I'll turn it over to you. I think you'd like to speak to us for about 10 minutes, and then we can have some dialogue after.
Thank you, David, for organizing this event and having me in this program. East Turkestan, also known Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, is the ancestral homeland of the Uyghur and other Turkic peoples who are mostly Muslim. Since 1949, it has been under Chinese occupation. Since this occupation, the Chinese authority are trying to erase the cultural and religious identity of the Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims. This region is important because it's links to Asia, Eurasia, and has valuable natural resources like minerals and fertile land. China wants to absorb East Turkestan in the culture and remove Uyghur identity. Over the years, Chinese leaders like Mao Zedong have tried different ways to make Uyghurs more like the Han Chinese majority. They encourage the Han Chinese people to move to East Turkestan, changing the population mix. The government also controls education, promoting Chinese communist ideas and discoursing Uyghur language and the customs. Since 2017, the Chinese authorities built what they call the education center, but the reality is concentration camps. Numerous such facilities were built across in Turkestan and have been officially described by the Chinese government as vocational training centers. However, accounts from those who have been survived these camps painted different pictures, suggesting that the intent behind these institutions is forcefully suppress Uyghur religious beliefs and the ethnic identity. Notably, the intellectuals and the community leaders were among the first to be detained. Testimonies of the survivors, independent media reports, and the leaked Chinese government official documents indicate that the detainees are coerced into renouncing their identity, pledging allegiance to Chinese Communist Party and its leaders, with the resistance allegedly met with the severe punishment. The most tragic victims of these camps are women, with the reports of sexual abuse and rape by the camp guards. Additionally, there have been alarming allegations of organ harvesting from the Uyghur detainees. Life outside the centers isn't much better. Uyghurs facing restriction in their religious practices and even basic communication with the family members. The Chinese officials tried to make the Uyghur more like the Han Chinese. They put the Han Chinese people in Uyghur homes to watch them and stop them from practicing their daily lives. This made the life hard for Uyghurs who are constantly watched and controlled. Some who have undergone what's claimed to be introduction in these centers have been subjected to trials in what are reports as a courts leading to imprisonment and the forced labor and the Chinese factories. Allegations of human rights violation also include reports of forced sterilization of Uyghur women to diminish the population growth within East Turkestan. The reported decline in birth rates by over 80% in the past years is attributed to such practices. Another victim of the Uyghur genocides are Uyghur children who have been separated from their families. It is estimated that nearly 1 million Uyghur children have been placed in state orphanage and boarding schools. The aim reported is cut their connection to the Uyghur identity and raise them as a loyal Han Chinese citizen to the CCP. Furthermore, the Uyghurs in diaspora cannot communicate with their families in East Turkestan since 2017, as communication with the people abroad was used as a pretext to send the Uyghurs in the concentration camps. The cultural erasure also extended to the destruction of the mosques. Since 2017, around 16,000 mosques have been damaged or completely demolished or converted into restaurants and the bars. With the targeting the places of worship, the CCP aims to erase the trace of the Islamic civilization in East Turkestan. Reflecting upon the question of why CCP does this to Uyghurs. The motivation behind the CCP's genocide policies can be conceived from the two angles: to drive the East Turkestan in the broader Chinese communist nation and the pursuit of economic diplomatic interests by the Chinese Communist Party. Economically, East Turkestan is important to China because its resources, strategic locations. China wants to control the region and to benefit its own economy. President Xi Jinping's policy, like the Belt Road Initiative, aimed to increase Chinese influence globally. However, these projects often benefit China more than countries they are supposed to have. China wants to dominate the global economy, and East Turkestan is the key to this plan. This is why they are trying to erase Uyghur culture. Many countries and the organizations have cut out China for its actions, but more needs to be done. People can help by learning about the situation, spreading awareness, and the boycotting product made with the forced labor. Xi Jinping's rise to power in China marks a significant period in this context. His leadership has introduced colonial projects like the Belt Road Initiative, launched in 2013, which is often presented as a means to foster economic and social development worldwide. Yet, BRI actually benefits are subject to debate. While the initiative has involved numerous countries, the primary beneficiary seems to be Chinese state's interest, given the Chinese companies often carry out the projects, provide the financing, and supply the labor. The BRI impact extends across Africa and Middle East region that are strategic for the Chinese access to resource and investments opportunities. The massive scale of these projects and the investment in the Muslim world have been highlighted by Chinese officials with significant financial figures cited. However, there are concern about the debt burden these projects can impose on host countries, as evidenced by the situation like Sri Lanka. Furthermore, the Belt Road Initiative operations and the long-term implications are being scrutinized across the various African nations. East Turkestan is indispensable for the Belt Road Initiative, which will make China the world's largest economic power. The fact that the homeland of the Uyghurs is located in the position connecting China to Central Asia and the Middle East is one of the most important reasons for the Beijing government to synthesize East Turkestan and eradicate their people. 4 of these 6 major trade corridors on the Belt Road Initiative pass throughout East Turkestan and reach other regions. Kashgar, one of the historical city of East Turkestan, is also adjacent to Pakistan, where the largest investments are made within the scope of Belt Road Initiative. Special commercial zones have been created there. It is noteworthy that a year after the announcement of the Belt Road Initiative in 2013, concentration camps were established in East Turkestan. Since 2017, when the Belt Road Initiative project escalated, millions of Uyghurs have been sent to concentration camps. These are crimes committed by the Chinese Communist regime against humanity, contrary to democracy, human rights, and universal values, have resonated with the international public opinion. So far, 12 countries recognize CCP's policies in East Turkestan as a genocide and or crimes against humanity. In fact, the United States was first government in the world to recognize the Uyghur genocide, when Secretary Mike Pompeo declared that designated Chinese crimes against Uyghurs as a genocide in January 2021. In August 2022, report the UN High Commissioner for the Human Rights revealed that China might have committed international crimes, including crimes against humanity against Uyghurs. Uyghur Tribunal, Independent People's Tribunal in London, has recognized that China committed the crimes of genocide in 2022 as well. In this regard, the silence of many Muslim countries on this issue is troubling. The Islamic world, which is under economic, diplomatic, political, and the security influence of China, is subject to heavy disinformation by the Beijing government. As a result of this disinformation, China's strategic and economic leverage over the world, particularly the Islam world, most of the Muslim majority countries have stood silent and supported China with the Uyghur genocide. Last but not least, it should be noted that hopeless is not the option. Please visit our website, uygurstudy.org, educate yourselves and others, speak out for the Uyghurs, and raise awareness about the situation. One of the most effective ways to stand up against the Uyghur genocide is the boycott product tainted with the Uyghur forced labor. Thank you so much for having me.
You're muted, David.
Yeah, thank you very much, Abdülhakim. Great presentation. I'm sure that people know much more than they did 10 minutes ago. So thank you for that excellent overview. Moiter, maybe we can just talk to you for a minute. Maybe just before all the oppression started, maybe just tell us a little bit about the Uyghur community in China. What was the population? What were the sources of income? What is the language like? Is it a Turkic language? Just kind of give us some information like education levels and so forth.
Sure, of course. As Abdülhakim already has mentioned, the Uyghur region is called East Turkestan in our native language, and that's the name used before the Chinese occupation. But after the annexation of the country in 1949, it has been known by its new name, Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, which in Chinese simply means new territory. Uyghurs are indigenous people who have lived in this area for thousands of years with Indo-European and Turkic ancestries. The histories of the Uyghurs dates back to, it has more than 4,000 years, and several independent states has been established throughout this land history. And the culture, history, language, and identity of the Uyghur people have very little in common with Han Chinese, and it's more in common with other Turkic people in Central Asia, such as Uzbeks, Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, and etc. In terms of educational level, I can't really generalize here, but I would say that Uyghurs are moderate people with a big percentage studied in higher education. And the source of income, this region, as Abdülhakim has mentioned already, is very rich for oil resources and natural resources like minerals, coal, and etc. So, but however, the establishment of the People's Republic of China in 1949 has led to a new era of oppression. The Chinese communist governance in the region is considered as the darkest chapter in the Uyghur history, and it's still an ongoing nightmare today. And under the current condition, the very existence of the Uyghur people is under threat. But I think, just to be clear, the repression towards the Uyghurs is nothing new. In the Western world, you always see that or hear that in public domain in the last couple of years. It's often described that under the rule of Xi Jinping, these are happening to the Uyghurs. But in fact, the situation was pretty bad even before Xi Jinping came to power. It was just that he has taken it to a whole other level. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's very good. So you said that the Uyghurs traditionally were moderate people. Does that mean like there was a small percent of them that would make Hajj? A small percent would go to Mecca? Is that an indication that the Uyghurs were relatively moderate?
Yes.
Okay. And all right, so I guess we can get right into it. And I think before you told me the population of the Uyghurs in China is 12 to 14 million, about that. Okay. And
regarding the population, the Chinese official statistics says the Uyghurs are 12 million people. If you add, over 1.5 million Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, Tajik, other Turkic people in Chinese on statistic around the 15 million. But reality is more than that, because in the Chinese communist regime, they call us minority. We are not minority in our country, but they call us minority, have a right to register 2 children. So, for example, our family, we are 7 siblings. 2 of them were able to register as a citizen of China. Rest were not able to register because of the birth control. So there is like a statistic by Uyghur intellectual who studied the population and by city, village. They come around 19 to 20 million people in East Turkestan. This is the reality. And regarding the income, what you asked before, since the occupation 1949, the communist China, destroyed individual right. They confiscated the land, wealth, put the people, and at that time, they called Logai, one sort of the concentration camps, and they never accepted Uyghurs as a citizen of People Republic of China. We even were not secondary class citizens. Well, the Uyghurs all the time, that were hard to get a job, and it's all the time, you could not do business because they brought the new settlers, the Han Chinese, they get the beneficiary. So we were, almost 30 years from 1949 until 1980s. This area was closed for any people from abroad at that time. And since the Deng Xiaoping era in the 1979, when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan and China get trouble, Vietnam in the east, and communist China, as you know, with the ping pong diplomacy, when the Henry Kissinger went to Beijing, and then later the Nixon, and they established the relationship with the West. And at that time, 80s and 90s, they give us a little bit freedom to learn our language, to learn our history, do some business. And then we were able to travel abroad, particularly to Pakistan, to Saudi Arabia, to Turkey. Very few people were able to go to the Hajj. And we had, almost 70 years right now, there is not materials or enough scholars. You can learn your religion, because communist China is very afraid of the religion. The religious belief give you strength. Religious belief give you solidarity. Religious belief give you like a fight against inhuman circumstances, and to assimilate, to eradicate, and to create one party, one leader, which is right now the Communist Party trying to do it, without the morality, individual rights, human rights, democracy. So they to try to create a new nation, and there's no place for humanity. And mostly as Uyghurs we suffered, and what they said, Uyghurs are moderate, because the Uyghurs are the 1,000 years we were on the Silk Road. We saw many religions come and go, many nationalities, very culturally rich people, Uyghurs, and very expensive and well-educated people, because we had exchange. We came from these traditions. So, for example, our northern neighbors are Russian. We have like a European, access to European education and knowledge. And then on the southern side, if you look, India. India was long time by the British, again, European education system. And we are related to Central Asia, which Central Asia is, if you look, by the Islamic civilization, the brain for the people, to get the knowledge, well educated, being moderated, and respected our religion, our nationality, living in harmony. So we come from this parts of the world, and the Uyghur culture and music, poet, literature, very rich, but our food is very rich. So we will, when you come to Virginia, we will have to go to a Uyghur restaurant. You can, have with your own eye to see it.
Okay, great. So as far as the beginning of the worst of the oppression, I believe in 2017, in that time frame, was there anything that sparked it? Were there any protests or demonstrations among the Uyghur community? I know that you talked about the strategic geographical position of the Uyghur area in China, but I didn't quite understand. I know it's very close to Turkmenistan and so forth, and but is part of the Belt and Road to build actual roads or trains through the territory, and that's why they needed to crack down?
No, actually, the Chinese Communist government, when they occupied our country in 1949, they built like a Bingtuan. This is like a Xinjiang production construction company, like the British, ruled India under the East Indian Company, and as the Dutch ruled Indonesia like a VOC company. So this company, this company is sanctioned by the U.S. government, Bingtuan. XPC, the short version, XPC is sanctioned by the US government. This company has more than 3 million members as a state in states, and you can buy their stocks in the Shanghai or Hong Kong or Tianjin exchange market. And this company controls over 80% of our wealth, roads, water, infrastructure, everything. And the Belt Road Initiative is actually global version from this company to control other countries. Today we can see, for example, China-Pakistan economic corridor, which is Pakistan become like the next province to China. They cannot have independent foreign policy or a security policy. Our location is, if you look, south, we are neighboring with India, with Pakistan, next to Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Russia, and Mongolia, and from the east, China. And of course, we are, as Uyghurs, almost 70 years under Chinese Communist government's rule, but they cannot. This regime cannot tolerate other looking, other face, other nationality. It's not just as Uyghurs facing this genocide. Tibetan, the same, facing this genocide. Falun Gongs facing this genocide. The Chinese Christians facing almost the same oppression from the Chinese Communist government. It's ideology, historical, and the Chinese attempt to dominate and to take over the world. To this policy, they want to get rid of the Uyghur population on this land. And I think this is a big reason behind this.
And so when the Chinese government cracked down, extremely aggressively around 2017, did people in the Uyghur community realize what was happening? Did a lot of them escape during that time? Did a lot of them leave China at that time? Or was the Chinese government's approach more subtle and people didn't realize what was happening until it was too late to leave?
Walter, please, you are the expert.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a bit difficult to answer this question with a statistic, but when this happened in 2017, it was a slow process. So in the beginning, people in the diaspora would hear or get messages from people still in China, and they would only tell you that, the political atmosphere has changed, I have to delete you on WeChat or whatever. And gradually, people in the diaspora lost communication with their contacts back home. And then slowly we started hearing about people disappearing, and there's camps being built, and satellite images showed a wave of buildings and detention compounds. So that was the scenario, but it was never easy for the community members to obtain a passport or to leave the country. It was just never easy. And the diaspora in science nowadays, I can say that Central Asia has been the home for the largest Uyghur diaspora, but this is through the first wave of immigration that I guess started in 1950s, when during the establishment of the PRC, and that the fact that the new regime imposed restrictions on Uyghur cultural practices, which continued throughout late 1960s as the Cultural Revolution accelerated. And then the last wave of migration only began in 1990s and continued through the late 2016 till authorities began confiscating people's passport and committing those mass atrocities crimes. So of course, some are lucky enough to leave, but this is just a few, very, very few number. And those who have managed to flee in the last 2 decades are mostly settled in Turkey, which is also home for the largest Uyghur diaspora in some European countries, and US and Canada. Yes.
Okay. And okay, so now maybe we can talk about what's happening now. If you look at the orphanages, I believe there's between 900,000 and 1 million children taken from their homes out of a total population of something like 12 or 14 million. It's a very, very large percent. So is it almost all Uyghur children that are taken out? At what ages are they taken from their family? And are they ever reunited with their parents, or are they sent to live elsewhere in China?
Yeah, when this big crackdown began in 2017, 2016, 2017, Chinese Communist government built between the cities largest boarding schools, and at the same time concentration camps. What they did is put the people who are, not normal, they say. We want to make the Uyghur people normal. What not normal is, you have on dignity, you are on belief, you live as a Uyghurs, you have beard, or, you say the woman wearing the traditional clothes and not look like the Han Chinese. They were not normal. They put them in the concentration camps, and then they took the children. There are, very young people. We saw, like babies, and 3-4 years old, because nobody were there to care of them in the orphanage and the boarding schools. And then put the other Han Chinese communist cadres in the Uyghur homes. This is, how can I describe? You know, in Chinese own statistic, on media reports, 1.1 million Han Chinese communist cadres deployed by the Uyghur homes. Imagine you have wife, you have kid, you have home, they will come, a communist Chinese cadre live with you 24 hours for months, 2 months, 3 months. And this person, this functionary has power to give you score. Are you normal? Are you practicing some things, you know, against communist government, expectations? And this tragedy turned the all Uyghur families' homes in the open prisons. You are, you know, we had when I was born in East Turkestan, went to communistic schools. At that time, my parents were forced to work, you know, in like they call community working place, but they were, you know, like forced to learn communistic ideology after work. But when they come at home, home was the only free place you can have, you know, like an own life. You can live as a Uyghurs, a human being. We get to learn the morality, behavior, some history, some our religious beliefs from our parents. And this crackdown destroyed this home. And you, as a Uyghurs, we were like a prisoners at our own home. And through this, you know, they put many children, as a report says, 900 to 2 million children orphanage school. And I participated in 23rd of January last month in Geneva, UPR. This is like a universal periodic review on the Chinese human rights situations. And the Chinese diplomats, they tell you know, they said, we are helping Uyghurs and making them, cultivating them, and giving them opportunity in these schools. We're providing them the foods, housing. Their family, if they want, can visit them, and they can take them one day to home. This is like from Chinese diplomats last month in Geneva, you know, in front of the whole the world, and of course U.S. and some the European countries criticized these practices, and the Chinese right now trying to eradicate or eliminate other nationalities like Uyghurs and Tibetan through boarding school, sterilization of the women, forcefully marrying with the Han Chinese. So cutting that, you know, like a growth size. Maybe, you know, in 10, 15 years, that they will be like a no more Uyghurs coming out as a young kids, you know. That they are already born, will educated like a Chinese. They do, if you can't change them, they put, you know, concentration camp, forced labor. And we are right now, you know, because the Chinese communist governments, this genocide is like a perfection from Nazi Germany's methods, Soviet gulags practices, imperial Japanese cruelties combined together. And there is no reports, no documents. We cannot see, you know, gas chambers, no shooting, no pictures, no, you know, like a total surveillance. You cannot go after the document where they are. They say, you know, like crimes, and they say in our country, Xinjiang, so high, the sentence were so high in the courts, but you never find a paper, which individual is sentenced or what was crime. There's no documentation. It's very difficult for the Uyghur people to explain this situation as is. Despite this tragedy, the water is one of the experts. They're collecting the information, more than 1,000 testimonies with the name, with the paper, and we have several Chinese on government officials documents. We have there is a website, www.xinjiangpolicefiles.org. You can see there, thousands of people's pictures, names, IDs, and the crimes. If you look at the crimes, a 70 years old woman said to his son, "Don't drink alcohol." This is crime to go to the concentration camps, for example. So this is the real situation. And of course, Chinese Communist government has long arm, not in the third world, in Muslim country, but in Europe, and even in the US. If you look, there was a leaked document published, a summary by the New York Times. There were, thousands Xi Jinping speech video. They never released it. They just released summary. So we have enough material, and then we have from 2020 to August. There is a report from the UN Human Rights High Commissioner Officer Michelle Bachelet at that time, saying China may doing crimes against humanity. This report came from the table in the UN, China, and the China's front and majority. In the UN, if you go to UN bodies, the China has collected many third world countries around them. Majority are there. From this table with the Chinese officials sitting, came the reports China may conduct crimes against humanity on Uyghurs. So we have enough reports, but actually, the attention from the world public opinion, media, governments are very low. And I think because if you stand against the Chinese Communist Party's cruelty, there is a consequence. If you're academician, they will go after you. If you are businessman, you will lose business access. So in Chinese Communist government today, already documenting not just Uyghurs, all population around the world, friend of China, enemy of the China, then between them. So this is the practice what we are facing to.
Okay, Moiter, maybe to specifically ask you a few questions. So with the orphanage, are most of the children repatriated to their parents, or are most of them sent further inland into China to live with the Han communities? You're on mute. Moiter.
Sorry about that. Yes. So to answer that question, so the reason behind those children taken to state-run orphanages is, of course, the fact that there's this huge number of people being detained in detention, and that has led to the coercive family separation. While it's very hard to give you specific statistic in here because of the restrictions on the flow of information that's coming out from China. But we do know that there are cases, in some certain cases, a fewer cases, where the children are sent to relatives or extended families to take care of. But given the scope of this mass internment, if there are no extended family members left, children often end up in state-run orphanages called Child Welfare Guidance Center, or given away to Han Chinese families to raise. But there are it's very hard to come up with to give you exact statistics here. But I can say that in these schools, children are often exposed to intensive Chinese cultural education. which is a systematic state-directed assimilation program. And for example, in elementary schools, students must be instilled with this so-called core values of socialism, gratitude education, and in junior highs, students must be instilled with the 75 signs of extremism, which was partially mentioned by Hakim a bit earlier, which includes growing a beard, wearing hijab, and etc. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's fine. Before I ask my next question, I just want to make a comment. I think it's important that we realize what a great spokeswoman Moiter is. Many other spokespeople of oppressed communities have a tendency to exaggerate and to embellish. If you heard Moiter, how careful she is in her words, she doesn't like to make statements unless she has statistics to back up those statements. So I think that really adds a lot of credibility to the spokespeople from the Uyghur community. So let's keep that in mind. As far as organ harvesting, do you have a sense as to how widespread that is, or is it limited? What do you answer?
Yeah, from survivors' testimonies, there has been few cases of people who have directly witnessed organ harvesting. But again, I cannot give you any statistics here. And even from satellite imageries, there has been documented that in certain situation there has been developments of the camps. You can see that it starts with a smaller size compound. In a period of time, it develops into forced labor facilities, and gradually you could also spot crematoriums and laboratories that's been built nearby. That says something, but it does not provide us to conclude with a statistics and these questions.
Okay.
I want to add, regarding this organ harvesting situations in our region, the Chinese Communist government collected data, DNA test, face recognition, voice recognition test from everywhere. Imagine, from children to elderly, everybody has already data in Chinese data bank, surveillance systems. And we saw, for example, some Chinese hospitals advertising in Middle Eastern country for the halal organs. Somebody never drank alcohol or eat pork, something like that. It means if somebody need an organ, they can put the button on the computer. They will find who is the suitable organ where they know them, and already our concentration camps or prisons. So we cannot, as Muatir said, we don't have data, fact, statistic, but the practice, the huge collection of data are concerning, and the Chinese Communist government using our country as a giant test field for the surveillance, for the medical experimental, and many other cruelties, and which we cannot come, here's the paper, here's the document, what's the happening. The same is like with the Falun Gong practitioner happening regarding the organ harvesting. There are some reports doing in the UK and the US, some colleagues regarding the organ harvesting.
Yeah, that makes sense. If the Chinese government controls the Uyghurs so closely anyway, with all their surveillance, why do they need blood samples and biometric data points of all the people when they are watching them all the time anyway? But what you said for marketing halal organs, that makes sense. Unfortunately. Are Uyghurs sent abroad as slave laborers? Do the Chinese make money from sending groups of Uyghurs to work in other countries, and the Chinese government takes the payments?
Chinese communist government, it's not unknown. They sent the Uyghurs to abroad because they know, if they send the Uyghurs, they will manage get out and somewhere, seeking for freedom or asylum. So we are not experiencing. They sent Uyghurs, but they did, until 2008, they sent some Uyghurs to work in Saudi Arabia, some Middle Eastern country, which I met with them at that time, like labor people. But right now, not. We cannot find anywhere. But if you look, in what the Chinese government recently declared, they created 3 free economic trade center in our country. One is in Urumqi, one is in Korgas, one is in the Kashgar city. When we look in the Kashgar city, how huge is the free trade economic zone is, there are some reports, they may, like a place for the million laborers to work there. They want to, bring some Chinese company who they need, intensive labor to those areas, so they can put the Uyghurs for the forced labor facilities. And we see, because of the Chinese, what I said before, the big one, the XPCC company, they are managing the forced labor. They have like a, you cannot go after them because there are many chain companies. They're taken from other companies. For example, we have right now a huge cry in Germany because BSP has a production facility in our country in Korla. They announced to close it because they are too close to nuclear test area, and their chain companies are deploying the Uyghur forced labor. And we have right now in Urumqi Volkswagen factory, and they are under pressure. They're already, saying we don't use Uyghur forced labor because they hired one other company. They said we don't have it, but they cannot prove. This is like a ongoing struggle, and unfortunately, and Volkswagen again, going where the genocide is, and we are trying to cut ties with the Chinese Communist government in between them.
Okay. Are there American companies that are benefiting from Uyghur slave labor?
Maybe Martha, you can comment, sir?
Yes. So the forced labor issue, of course, it came into the public domain in 2020, and lots of international brands has been involved. In terms of American companies, I can let's say in textile industries, for example, you can find large size companies like Zara, Adidas, Nike, Tommy Hilfiger, Ralph Lauren, and a lot of them operate sources from cotton from this region, which is heavily linked to forced labor, as well as Apple, for example, which is also alleged that Apple's supply chain may be indicated in the use of forced labor, and Tesla, which there has been a number of evidence and reports emerged that it was using batteries produced by factories in the region. And of course, also Amazon, which has also been accused of selling products made of forced labor in this region.
Okay. And is there legislation in the United States to stop importing products that are made with Uyghur slave labor?
Go ahead, Martha, please.
Yes, the US government has passed the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act some years ago. That's all I know. It is an import ban, and it is the US is the only country that has put an import ban on products that's sourced or made in this region. But I think that's not enough that only US has taken this step. because some later evidence has shown that products that's being stopped at the port in New York are directly being shipped to the European market, for example. So it is not enough that only one country is taking this import ban, because it does not really make an impact on the situation on ground unless we can also convince that Canada and European Parliament also passes similar legislations.
Are there any United States senators or congressmen that are especially sympathetic to the Uyghurs?
I think Hakim can answer that question.
Yes, for example, when we look back how the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act passed, it was like both parties, Democrats and Republican parties members supported, and then we have some very good Congress members. For example, if you look at the Selective Committee on China, Congressman Mike Gallagher, and from Republican side, and from Democratic side, the Congressman Raja, and then we have like a Chris Smith and many others, Tom Cotton, and many people are trying to support us. But the problem is in the Congress. There are several legislations still in the Congress. We are trying to get past the Congress, but the problem is one side, China hiring very big lobby firm, and even the politician, very high-level government, former U.S. officials working on those companies from both parties, but from governments. And second is that the biggest huge corporate, they are again lobbying in behalf of China to weaken those legislation or not passing them, because if they don't work, China punishing them and cannot get any business there. And we are seeing in the U.S. From Uyghur perspective, if you look Hollywood, there is nothing regarding this genocide, because the many firm in the Hollywood invested by China, controlled by China, and many huge mainstream media are again influenced by Chinese Communist government, and academia, university professors. It's I think what happening to Uyghurs are not staying in our region. We can see where activities from Chinese Communist government even in the U.S. So it's very difficult to counter the Chinese disinformation, and the Chinese Communist government are mastering propaganda and the cheating. They are master. It's very difficult to expose to them. So this is our difficulty in the Congress, but we are hopeful the U.S. government and the Congress and the public will get to know real face of the Chinese Communist government intention and practices. It's not the danger for the Uyghurs only anymore. It's for the well-being, the humanity, and the free world, and the religious freedom, democracy, as you said, individual right, and it's very important to get the bottom of the situation. And I think many think tanks even cannot come openly reports or talk about the situation, because they are afraid to losing their interest or going to China. I think this is the big problem.
Yeah, and the Chinese have even effectively silenced most of the Muslim nations too. Very few Muslim nations say anything in support of the Uyghur community.
Yes, this is myself. I studied in Cairo, and Al-Azhar University. I'm a graduate there. And I speak Arabic too. I'm looking close the situation there. And which I, did research and wrote the book, Menace China's Colonization of Islamic World and Uyghur Genocide. And what many Muslims are seeing live on the TV, there is some wars, some conflicts, and one side is from caused by the Western powers, but they are not paying attention the danger coming from the Chinese Communist government, like in history. Today, if you look how China are taking over those countries, infrastructure, security apparatus, and financial institutions, bind them to them, we can see, in those countries. And the media by the Muslim majority countries are controlled 99% by the government, and the rest 1% by the government's friends. And Chinese Communist government, they said openly, okay, we cannot control the Western democratic countries. As long as we can, control the media, particularly on the Muslim country, we can get away with the Uyghur genocide. For example, what they are spreading their disinformation in the Arabic or in Muslim countries media, they're partnering with the news TV station, media outlets, newspaper. Even, for example, in Cairo, there is like a Al Akhbar news paper, like the largest one. If you open the page, there is like a chapter, news from China, sponsored and by the Chinese Communist government. And those articles, news written by China Radio International in Beijing. And the normal Egyptian, if you look the newspaper, he think, this is written by the Egyptian journalist. Same in Pakistan, Indonesia, Malaysia, and many others, and they are buying the FM radios and creating the Confucius Institutes and the universities. And they are offering them a 5G network, ZTE, iCloud system, almost for free in the Muslim countries. If you look at the information cables going through the world, particularly in the Muslim countries, are by the China. We can look today, the Egyptian new capital, the administrative capital, 100% designed by China, financed by China, built by China, right now managed by the China. And every information, from governmental administratives and departments are going to Beijing. So for the Beijing is the information is essential, important. If they say if we get enough information, we get to make money. If we have the information and the money, we can buy the power. And this is like a modern colonization. They don't need to put their military, their plane, their tanks, but they, taking over the country. This is the Muslim countries facing today.
Right. And I think you've written about all the anti-Semitism in the Chinese publications. It seems like the Chinese are trying to divert attention from their genocide of the Uyghurs by blaming Israel of committing genocide against the Palestinians, which there's no truth to that. But it seems like they're trying to deflect attention from their atrocities onto somebody else, so the world doesn't ask the Chinese any questions about the Uyghurs. But Moiter, in our discussions a month or so ago, you were telling me about the extent to which the Uyghur women are subjected to sterilization and IUD placement, and you were telling me that there's samples of women that are 58 years old or something, and said they have no interest in having children, and they were still forced to go through sterilization or IUDs. Is it basically almost every woman in the Uyghur community that is confronted with this dilemma? And if that's the case, then there won't be births of Uyghurs.
Go ahead, Moiter, please. You are expert, and I will make a comment.
Yes, this is the reason we call it a genocide because these provisions has an um, intent to destroy the growth of the population as a whole. And yes, as I said earlier, from witness testimonies, there has been people who have testified, and this is actually quite recent, about neighboring committees coming to each household to distribute food in orders about you have to literally meet up at the hospital at a certain time to undergo for sterilization, IUD placement, and even women at their latest stage of pregnancy is forced to abortion, and that's that's that sort of situation is it varies from regions to region. So if you look at southern regions, for example, it is you can find more harsher enforcement, while in the north it's probably less strict.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's real genocide. I think you told me in in the rural areas, the birth rate has declined as much as 90% in some rural areas.
Yes, that's true. Um, in some rural areas, the natural population rate has even reached negative. And this is per Dr. Adrian Zen's latest findings. You can find that in southern areas, there has been a um, 80 to 90% deduction in natural population growth. And in certain counties, it has reached net zero. And I would also like to address that in the United Nations has been an apparent failure in addressing this issue, just like how they have been responding to many other pressing issues in the world happening today. Um, but in terms of ICG and the Genocide Convention, so under international law, genocide is defined as crimes of crimes, and the prohibition of genocide is an well-established use coherence norm, meaning that it binds all member states of the international community and permits no derogation. Um, the People's Republic of China has ratified this convention in 1949 and 1983, and it has an obligation to prevent, punish, and not to commit genocide under international law. But despite the universality of the Genocide Convention, states can place a reservation under certain provisions of this treaty, which means that they do not agree to be bound by those provisions. And this is what China did. They placed a reservation under Article 6, which deals with the jurisdiction of International Court of Justice, meaning that they do not recognize the jurisdiction of ICJ over the interpretation, application, or fulfillment of this convention. And this is why the UN bodies are unable to step in. And similarly, it's with the International Criminal Court, China has never been a state party to Roma Statute, as it has never ratified the treaty. And ICC cannot investigate or prosecute any individuals who have committed crimes within China's territory without cooperation with the Chinese government or a referral by the United Nations Security Council. So that kind of puts the situation in an endless dead circle with no solution at all. Looking at it from an international law perspective. But then, although in the case of Ukraine, for example, we have seen that the ICC has issued arrest warrant against Putin, despite the fact that Russia was also never a state party to the Roma Statute. But I mean, although we can doubt that ICC does not maybe have the ability to enforce its decision, but it's still a symbolic remedy for the Ukrainian people. And so why do we not see ICC responding with such manner to the Uyghur genocides or any other active genocides that's happening in the world today? That's a question to think about. So despite all those atrocities overall, I think that the international human rights law and the UN treaties it can only help a small number of states and a small percentage of the world's population, leaving behind those who are most subject to the worst form of abuses.
Okay. Maybe we'll give each of you one more minute or so to make any closing remarks that you would like. Perhaps you would want to include in that what you think Americans can do to help. So, Abdülhakim, would you like to make your final statement now?
Yes. First of all, I'm very thankful for being in this conversation with you. I think it's important for the public in the US to inform China's cruelty, because coming in the election in the US, it's very important for the public to see the Uyghurs, take a lesson from us. We see, study the Uyghurs to get to know China, how they, treat the other nations like the Uyghurs, the conducting genocide, and openly, dehumanizing us. And even from our organs, armed forced labor, from children, they try to benefit from every part of the Uyghur people and they're conducting this genocide. So to know the China, look at the Uyghurs and the Tibetan, give attention, because China want to have war with the US, not in somewhere else, but in the US inside, in the system. I think they are trying to use the democracy, freedom of speech in the US to destroy those values. I think that the people should pay the attention. It's related to the American public.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Moira, would you like to make your final comments?
Yes, I think from a consumer's perspective, we have consumers' power. You can raise awareness about the situation, check the product label to see its origins, boycott problematic brands, support ethical brands. On the contrary, you can advocate for a change, contact the companies and ask them to disclose information about their supply chain, can engage with policymakers, contact your local representatives and express your concerns. And you can even also donate or volunteer. The international community has purportedly internalized the tragic lessons of Holocaust and the horrors in Srebrenica. Every time when things like this happen, we would only restate the statement "never again" as a maxim. But unfortunately, those petty declarations has always failed to translate into meaningful action, because we do witness that never again happens again and again and again with alarming frequencies. So in the face of the worst forms of atrocities, the international community bears a collective responsibility to challenge the systematic injustice that remains unquestioned by law. And I think it is a responsibility of each and every one of us to contribute in some way to bring this justice into being. And at the end, thank you for inviting me to this panel.
Well, it was our pleasure. There's a lot that the Uyghurs don't have, and they're very oppressed. But one thing they do have going for them is the two of you being very fine spokespeople for the Uyghur community. So you're a real credit to the Uyghur community, and you're serving your people very, very well. So we very much appreciate you speaking to us. And Abdülhakim and Moira will thank you and conclude this program. Thank you all for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. So we can cut it.